In the mid-14th century, a silent killer swept across continents, a mysterious disease that would erase nearly half of Europe's population and forever alter the course of human history. This is the story of the Black Death, the plague that reshaped our world in ways still felt today. It was the year 1347. Europe was thriving. Trade routes linked east and west like never before. Silk, spices, and ideas traveled along the ancient Silk Road, connecting China, the Middle East, and Europe. Cities like Venice, Florence, and Paris were growing rapidly. But with prosperity came vulnerability. Ships carried not only goods, but death. In the bustling port of Kaffa, on the Crimean coast, merchants of the Genoese Republic were under siege by Mongol forces. As legend tells, when disease struck the Mongol army, they hurled infected corpses over the city walls, an early and horrific form of biological warfare. The fleeing Genoese sailors unknowingly carried the plague aboard their ships, heading straight toward Europe. In October 1347, 12 ships arrived in the Sicilian port of Messina. Those who greeted them were horrified. The sailors lay dead or dying, covered in black boils oozing blood and pus. Within days, the disease spread through the city like wildfire. The terrified authorities ordered the ships out of the harbor, but it was already too late. The Black Death had arrived. The plague's rapid spread. The disease moved faster than anyone could imagine. From Sicily, it spread northward to Italy, France, Spain, and beyond. By 1348, it had reached Paris, London, and Oslo. Historians estimate that between 1347 and 1351, the Black Death killed between 75 and 200 million people, roughly 1/3 to 1/2 of Europe's population. Entire villages vanished overnight. In some towns, there was not enough living to bury the dead. Medieval chroniclers wrote of carts overflowing with corpses and priests collapsing mid-sermon. The living were scarcely sufficient to bury the dead, one wrote. What was the Black Death? For centuries, no one knew exactly what caused the plague. Many believed it was a punishment from God for humanity's sins. Others blamed bad air, planetary misalignment, or even minority groups such as Jews, leading to horrific persecution and massacres. Modern science has since revealed the true culprit, the bacterium Yersinia pestis. It was transmitted primarily through the bites of infected fleas carried by black rats that traveled on merchant ships and wagons. The bacteria could infect humans in 3 main forms: bubonic plague, causing painful black swellings or buboes in the groin and armpits; pneumonic plague, attacking the lungs and spreading through coughing; septicemic plague, infecting the bloodstream, often killing victims within a day. The mortality rate was staggering. In some areas, over 70% of those infected perished. As death spread, society itself began to crumble. Governments fell apart, fields went unplowed, trade stopped. Fear ruled every corner of Europe. In cities like Florence, once thriving centers of art and commerce, tens of thousands died within weeks. Wealthy families fled to the countryside, while the poor were left behind. In England, labor shortages led to skyrocketing wages, and the first cracks appeared in the rigid feudal system that had dominated medieval Europe for centuries. Meanwhile, religion, once a pillar of comfort, began to waver. When prayers failed to stop the plague, faith itself was shaken. Some turned to flagellants, groups who whipped themselves in public penance, believing suffering could appease divine wrath. Others lost belief altogether. The human toll and horror. Eyewitness accounts from the time describe unimaginable horror. The Italian writer Giovanni Boccaccio, in his famous work The Decameron, painted a grim picture of Florence in 1348. Fathers abandoned their sons, wives their husbands, and one brother the other. None could be found to bury the dead for money or friendship. The dead were piled in mass graves. Dogs and wild animals scavenged in the streets. Entire monasteries were wiped out. Yet amidst the chaos, some remarkable acts of humanity emerged. Doctors, though powerless, risked their lives to study the disease. Gravediggers and clergy continued their work despite certain death. Global reach and legacy. The Black Death did not stop in Europe. It had begun in Central Asia, spread across the Middle East, North Africa, and even reached China and India. In every region, it reshaped societies differently. In China, the Yuan dynasty suffered massive population loss, accelerating its decline. In the Islamic world, great cities like Cairo and Damascus lost half their inhabitants. The global economy reeled. The once thriving Silk Road trade weakened. Empires collapsed. But out of devastation came transformation. The birth of modern Europe. The aftermath of the plague was a period of profound change. With so many dead, labor became precious. Peasants could now demand better wages and working conditions. When landowners refused, uprisings broke out, such as the English Peasants' Revolt of 1381. The feudal system, already strained, began to crumble. The seeds of modern capitalism and individual rights were sown in this fertile ground of desperation and change. Cities slowly rebuilt, but society was not the same. Art and literature turned darker, more reflective of human suffering. Death became a common theme, from grim paintings to the haunting imagery of Danse Macabre, the dance of death, symbolizing the equality of all before mortality. The Church, having failed to provide answers, lost much of its unquestioned authority, paving the way for intellectual movements like the Renaissance and later the Reformation. Scientific and medical impacts. Before the plague, medicine was bound by superstition. Afterward, the desperate search for understanding led to a slow awakening. Doctors began observing, recording, and questioning. Although it would take centuries for germ theory to emerge, the Black Death sparked the first steps towards modern epidemiology and public health. Quarantine, a word derived from the Italian 40 giorni, meaning 40 days, was first practiced in Venice during the plague, when ships were kept isolated before unloading. It was one of humanity's earliest organized disease control measures. Long-term demographic shifts. The demographic collapse of the 14th century reshaped the balance of power. With millions gone, land became abundant, and survivors inherited wealth and property. This redistribution accelerated social mobility. In Western Europe, serfdom began to fade. In Eastern Europe, however, the opposite occurred. Nobles tightened their control to maintain labor. This divergence would shape the continent's future political and economic paths. Environmental consequences. Even nature felt the effects. With far fewer humans cultivating the land, forests regrew, wildlife populations rebounded, and carbon levels in the atmosphere temporarily dropped, an early example of humanity's environmental footprint. Historians call this period the Great Rewilding. Fields turned to meadows, and abandoned villages disappeared under new growth, visible even today in parts of rural England and France. The plague's return and modern lessons. The Black Death never truly vanished. The plague returned in waves for centuries. In London, 1665, Marseille, 1720, and even into the 19th century. But none would match the devastation of the 14th century pandemic. Each recurrence, however, taught new lessons about sanitation, isolation, and the value of scientific inquiry. Even today, outbreaks of plagues still occur in small, treatable numbers, a reminder that this ancient killer is not entirely gone. Reflection: how it reshaped the world. The Black Death did more than kill millions. It redefined what it meant to be human. It dismantled the old world of rigid hierarchies and blind faith. It gave birth to the questioning spirit of the Renaissance, the labor reforms of modern Europe, and the first steps towards scientific thought. It reminded humanity of its fragility and its resilience. When we study pandemics today, from cholera to COVID-19, we are still living in the shadow of lessons first learned in the 14th century. The Black Death reshaped economies, belief systems, and the very structure of society. In the ashes of despair, humanity found new strength, new ideas, and a new world. Final. Out of death came rebirth. Out of darkness, the light of progress. The Black Death remains one of history's greatest tragedies, but also, paradoxically, one of its greatest turning points. This is how one plague reshaped the entire world.